Hello friends, and welcome back to the Hall of Craft! I'm back with another video for you guys. So, I have made these big, chunky, Runehammer Inspired Terrain Boards in the past, and these things are great. They have a nice carved grid on them, they're big, they're durable, and they look good. We love Runehammer here, and he has brought a lot to the community with this idea, but I think I can add a little bit more to it and also kind of combine it with some other ideas that I've seen here on YouTube. So my big problem with these boards is that over the years and over my various apartment moves, the corners have gotten quite dinged up and the XPS foam underneath gets exposed quite easily, kind of compromising your paint job, and that's just to do with the fact that they have these really vulnerable corners to them. So I figured that one thing I could do to instantly upgrade the quality of the Runehammer boards is to kind of smush them together and combine them with Professor Dungeon Master's Ultimate Dungeon Terrain, little dungeon pizza as it's known in the community, method. I think I can kind of combine those two things to create some much nicer and much more reliable and safe boards for myself. So I think that by combining these two ideas and doing it now as the Alistair of the future, who is a much better crafter than the Alistair of the past, I think I can create myself some nice, beautiful, durable, long-lasting terrain boards. So the plan here is I'm going to create 3 boards, each roughly about 2 foot in diameter, and I'm going to make them double-sided. That way I can have 6 biomes ready to go whenever I need them. And because my channel kind of functions as an archive of crafting tutorials, I'm not going to smush all of these into one video. I'm going to give each biome its own video, and I'm going to put them in a playlist that you can find here in the top right if you're watching this after it's posted. I'm going to put them all there together so that if you need to find a certain biome at a glance, it's right there and you don't need to watch through a 40-minute video to dig for the information you're looking for. So if you want to skip this intro after watching it for the 5th time, I'll make sure that I put bars in the bottom so everything is clearly labeled. Alright guys, so for this video I'm going to be focusing on the ice board. So to start out with this one, I just take a piece of string, a screw, and a Sharpie. And by placing the screw in the middle and wrapping the string around the Sharpie, I will draw a circle as big as I can on my 2 foot by 8 foot and 2 inch thick sheet of blue XPS foam. This stuff is great, you can just get it at the hardware store. And so one of the awesome things about the Runehammer terrain is that it is 2 inches thick, and this foam facilitates that. I know that some versions of the UDT or the Dungeon Pizza go a little thinner, a little bit more flat, but for this it's actually really important that we use the 2 inch thick because it'll facilitate the double-sided nature of these boards. I would not suggest using the thinner stuff, especially on the swamp or the lava boards. That's right, we're going to be making a lava board later. Once that's drawn, it's time to cut. For this, I'll just cut as close to the circle as I can with a big knife, and then once I'm partially through the foam, I'll snap it over my knee. This gives me a much more manageable chunk. Once I have that chunk, I'll take it over to my Proxon and use it to cut off the corners. You could do this with a knife, it'll just take a lot more time and you'll have to be a lot more patient. I have the Proxon, so I use it here because it saves me so much and it gives me a really nice smooth cut. Now it's time to draw the grid. For this, I just use a tape measure to find the center and then a triangle to square it up. From there, you can just mark out all of the inch marks with a pen, and it's just a matter of connecting the dots from here on out. You can skip this step if you don't like playing with grids, but on these boards I find them pretty subtle in the end after all the texturizing and other elements we add to it, and personally as a DM I find the grid very helpful on the table to just see things at a quick glance. The last thing I'm going to do to all of the boards is just take a sanding block and smooth the rough edge that I cut with the Proxon. Because I'm treating these like double-sided boards, I'm treating this edge almost like the base rim on a Mini, and I'd like it to be as clean as possible. So I want a nice cracked, icy texture for this board. So I'm gonna go back to the trusty dumbbell and just smash the crap out of this thing. Not going easy on it at all, just give it the juice. Once that's done, I'm going to use my knife along the grid lines just to help establish those a little bit more clearly. After that's done, I'm going to use a sculpting tool and a pencil and just run it along the lines to help accentuate them a little bit more. With the smash texture and the grid finished, it's time to take this thing over the top. Using my heat gun on medium temperature, I'm just going to run it along the surface of this board. What this is going to do is it's going to like accentuate all those cracks and also harden the surface of the foam, giving giving it more of like a smooth plasticky texture. Really helps define this whole thing and make it look more icy. Once that's finished, it's time to paint. I'm going to start by base coating this whole thing with a mix of dark blue paint and Mod Podge. After that's dry, it's time to paint it all up. This is a fairly simple process. For this, I'm going to use a nice scratchy brush, and I'm going to paint progressively brighter blues all the way up to like an icy white over top of the surface of this thing, and making sure to keep like a consistent direction as I'm painting it. This will help give it a nice windswept look. Eventually start mixing in whites and then dry brushing that across the surface as well. Once that was finished, I painted the whole surface of this board with a coat of gloss varnish to protect it and help it look shiny. So after doing that, you could call this finished, and honestly that's what I was planning on doing as well. But I noticed that because I was painting all of my boards simultaneously and the lava board was right next to the ice board, at some point I just got sloppy, or some red wash had like pooled on the floor next to it, and I got like a bunch of red kind of on the corner of my ice board, which really showed through because it's basically on top of like light blue and white paint. So I had to decide what to do about it. I tried to repaint that area of the board, but I think due to the fact that I had already gloss varnished it, the texture of the board was less defined. The gloss varnish, it doesn't really service trying to do the same techniques on top of it because it's smoother, it kind of fills in the cracks a little bit, so the dry brushing didn't really work as well, it didn't bring out that texture. So what ended up happening is the surface of that board just looked different, and so it really looked like I had repainted it. So I had to either decide to live with that or see what I could do about it. Decided I couldn't live with it, so I decided to do this step, and that step is to add snow. To make this snow paste, I just mixed together some baking soda, some white glue, and some white paint in a solo coat. Then I just globbed this snow onto the board randomly and pushed it around with my brush in the same direction that the paint marks were going to try and keep that windswept look. And honestly, as soon as I globbed it on the board, my internal monologue was like, "You've ruined it. This thing's garbage now. What a total waste." But I decided I had come this far, so I might as well see it through. So I started pushing the snow around with my brush and attempting to kind of replicate that windswept look. After I kind of was happy with this distribution of it, I pointed a fan at it and kind of blowing it in that same direction and decided, let's see how it looks when it's dry. And here's how it looked when it was dry. Actually, turned out pretty well. I'll let you decide whether you think it's better pre-snow or post-snow. I think that once I start adding terrain pieces on it, it'll help kind of disrupt that a little bit. Looks all right. Maybe it would have been better to leave it pre-snow, but I wasn't faced with that opportunity. So if you're following along, I'll leave it up to you. And with that, it's finished. Let's take a look at how it turned out. All right, there we have it. Double-sided terrain boards. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. A bit more of a simpler one than I've been doing lately, but sometimes it's nice to go back to the basics, and for me personally, it just feels good to have a nice staple in my collection that I know I can rely on. If you'd like to check out all of these other terrain board building videos, I will put a link to the playlist in the top right. I also have plenty of other terrain crafting and miniature painting videos that you can check out while you wait for the next one. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good week, everyone.